Hello and welcome to Stay Energetik, a podcast dedicated to our favourite Belarusian football team, the mighty Energetik BGU. Thank you so much for joining us on our weekly journey through the main talking points of Energetik's last match. Once we've covered that, we'll move on to our thoughts on how we see the next one panning out, and anything else Energetik related that we think you might want to hear.
Привет, я Liam.
And I'm Dan.
And for those of you who watched last Saturday's goalless draw at Dinamo Minsk, you will be aware that it wasn't necessarily a footballing classic. But we've decided to look on some of the positives that we drew from our Saturday early evening experience of Energetik. And we're going to start off with the fact that we kept a clean sheet, which is the first clean sheet that we've kept since week 8. It's only the fourth one we kept all season. And I thought we'd probably start as well, Dan, by talking specifically about Sadowski's performance in goal, because we were both quite impressed, were we not?
Yeah, he had a good game, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of other people agreed with us. For those who don't know, there's a man of the match poll that goes out on VK, the Russian equivalent to Facebook. And he got man of the match from that. I think 43%, give or take. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but yeah, a decent percentage of people thought that he had, the best performance out of all the Energetik players. I can't really argue with that. I mean, we're going to touch on a few other people who we feel did quite well. But yeah, it was a good performance from him, a quite accomplished performance. I don't think he put a foot wrong, really. And better than we've seen him before this season, that's for sure. I know he's swapping in and out a little bit, but I think that must have done him the world of good, confidence-wise.
I think that's very interesting, yes. I mean, we did see him last of all at Shakhtar, which obviously we billed as our biggest game of the season. I suspect he probably felt it was the biggest game of his season. And he certainly looked very nervous that evening. I remember one or two occasions when he slightly got away with it, although he did also make a couple of good saves. He looked a lot more confident, a lot more assured on Saturday. And I agree with you totally. I think in a game where none of our players stood out massively, I felt that was Sadowski as man of the match was a good shout, to be honest. Also very encouraged as well by the Yak this week, were we not? I think after a really, really disappointing performance against Belshina, although he wasn't great in the second half on Saturday, I felt he was much more like his old self.
Yeah, we spoke quite a lot last week about whether it was necessary to take him out of the side even. We'd kind of got to a point, not necessarily anything anti-him, but the idea that maybe other teams had kind of clocked on to him, or maybe his drive wasn't quite there, and maybe he could have done with a bit of a break. But he kind of answered those questions a bit. I know there's been a lot of questions about whether he might be moving on soon. Sometimes that can inspire a player to kind of give up and not bother. Sometimes that can really inspire a player to go, oh, hang on a second, if you're paying attention to me, I might just, that final 5%, I might just give that little bit extra. And it definitely felt that there was a more of a can-do attitude there. That may be unfair on his previous performances. I'm not going to say that he wasn't trying before, but it definitely felt that things were working for him better. And my assumption was that's a lot to do with his attitude, because he does seem like one of these players that's very emotionally involved in the game. We've got a number of players you can pick from across the leagues who are cold-hearted killers, so to speak. He'll be out there, he'll play left, right, centre, will score no matter what. And there are other players, everything just seems a bit... I was about to call him a Goldilocks player, and I don't think that's fair, actually. I'm just going to withdraw that a little bit. But there are players who need things to kind of fall in the right pattern, and perhaps he's kind of one of those players. He just needs things to kind of be playing right. But yeah, vastly better. Vastly better.
I think maybe as well a contributory factor in that was certainly the return of Bakic. I mean, again, we will look back to maybe the earliest appearances of Bakic this season and feel that certainly I felt that he was really not worth his place in the team. I couldn't really understand why we were bringing him off the bench, but certainly he's grown in my estimation considerably since then. And they do seem to link up well together. I think they both were a bit less impressive after the break. I think Bakic may be tired and was taken off. Probably the right decision, really. But certainly early on, they linked up very nicely and actually both had a good chance. And they do seem to work well together. So maybe that was a big part of why we saw more from the Yak this week. And obviously, there's still talk out there about him leaving. And sadly, of course, because we don't own him, we won't get a penny if he does. But ultimately, he did seem to be more up for it. And continuing a positive theme, really. I mean, again, another player I've been quite critical about in the past, Moatu, and perhaps unfairly, because he's another one of these players who we feel has perhaps been asked to play in a position he's not particularly keen on playing, a left wing back. I think he's getting better and better, Dan. I think we've always felt that going forward he's got a little bit to offer, but defensively as well. And when we think about where the goals have come from on the whole as well, over the last few weeks, we were quite critical of the side's defending. Very few have come down his side. And he clearly seems to be relishing a little bit more nowadays, an ability to get back and defend and be more used to his defence, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. It's a bit of a hard one because I really do rate Moatu. I think there is definitely a player there, but a bit like you just mentioned, I'm not necessarily sure he's playing in the right position. This seems like a conversation we have every week, but left back, right back. It's not his place. I mean, he's further forward, but he does seem to be adjusting to it better than we perhaps would have expected if we look back a few weeks. So, yeah, I'm really enthused by what I'm seeing there. He really does seem to be trying to make that position his own. And yeah, I'm more than happy to see him do that. Whether that means we don't need someone else to come into that position so he can move forward, that's perhaps a separate question, but yeah, he's doing a much better job at it, and that I suppose that's to be expected. I mean, we talk quite a lot about how inexperienced this side is, about how young they are, etc. They only get experience by playing. How else do you do it? So he's gaining that experience, he's gaining that time, and I think the club's better for it.
I think the big thing as well that would have particularly pleased you from an otherwise relatively sterile performance overall by both sides, to be fair, was your boy Nosko, wasn't it? You were pleased by Nosko because he's had a couple of quiet weeks, isn't he? And he is your boy, as we well know, Dan. And I'm a big fan of Nosko as well. He seems to be in the last couple of weeks somewhat nullified. I think that may be a deliberate ploy by the opposition in terms of identifying him as a key player in our system and somehow managing to make sure that he's a lot less of a presence in that midfield. But this week, he seemed to be really back to his best, and I know that will have pleased you no end.
Yeah, it does feel that he's been not necessarily targeted, but it does feel a little bit like other teams have looked at him as a strong point and tried to negate his impact on the game. Yeah, much better, much more involved. He had a cracking chance, which didn't quite work. The keeper was there to sweep it away when it hit the post. But yeah, a really good performance there. Really happy with that. And I'm not going out there to just defend him just because he's my boy. And I'm gonna be watching out for him because we've talked before about the starter player I'm really enthused by. But yeah, it was a much better impact. There we go. It's not even negating his performance, but the impact he had was far, far better. And that was good to see. And hopefully that will continue.
I think, once again, Dan, you seem to have got your posts and your crossbars mixed up for the second week running, but never mind. I think actually dwelling on that particular issue, and it probably brings us on to some of the things that we didn't like so much about Saturday. We didn't really like our continuous misfortune in front of goal in terms of crossbars. It's the third time now that we've hit the crossbar in the last 2 games. We've also had 3 goals disallowed in the last 3 games. And it seems to me that, as we said before, as we've mulled over before, we seem to be fractions away from having had far more than 2 points in the last 4 games. And in this case, even when Nosko's header had been pushed onto the bar, it rebounded right across the goal, could have hit the underside of the bar and gone in, didn't go in, and Miroshnikov was charging in, and the defender got there just in front of him, knocked it away. So again, a matter of inches. And I'm not saying necessarily that we would have gone on and won the game from there, because it was probably still half an hour to go. But, still, you do feel once again that Lady Luck has deserted us. We felt early on this season maybe we had 1 or 2 lucky decisions. And I certainly remember the Islar game thinking probably a draw is all we deserve from this. And then you just popped up right at the end with a wonderful goal. But if it was favouring us early on, we're certainly paying for it now, aren't we?
Yeah, I've used the phrase a couple of times before, but for millimeters, but for centimeters. We've been so close. And this is the thing that frustrates me a little bit. We've looked at this team, we've watched them perform, and but for fractions of centimeters, we're looking at different performance. This kind of ties in with my frustration, which I mentioned previous, looking at this team. This is a team that is performing above its level. This is a team that is going out there financially. We touched on this actually, and I meant to post out, but we touched on this in the live stream when we were talking about the game itself. This is a team that financially is in the bottom 4 or 5, and yet statistically, when we're looking at the table, is in the top 5 or 6. This is, there's a disparity between what's been thrown at this team and where it is. We're marginally off, guys. It's not massively different. And there's a difference, and I'm slightly waffling here now, and I'm going to try and bring this point to a close because I'm very conscious of the fact I'm waffling. There is a difference between watching your side go out there and give nothing. And you can see it sometimes with clubs you watch, and even clubs I watch, where things don't quite, there's no energy, there's no effort, there's no anything. This is a team that is giving energy, is providing, and I've just noticed that I'm kind of playing into that kind of the energy trope there, but it is giving it a go. It's giving that effort, and it's not for lack of effort at all, but for a few millimeters, but for a few centimeters. We're looking at a different goal tally. We're looking at a different win ratio, and yeah, I'm enthused by that, even if the performances aren't great.
I think the problem is, isn't it, that when you look at the stark facts, no wins in 4 and no goals in 3.5 games now, that's the problem, isn't it? We do look at it, and we are encouraged, and we would never suggest that this team is giving anything less than its all. But those are fairly stark facts, and I think the problem is that within that run, we have consistently given away a couple of gilt-edged chances to the opposition, which obviously you mentioned last week, Dan, and unfortunately, again, we did this week. We gave Dinamo 2 great chances in the first half to open their account. Thankfully, this time, a combination of poor finishing and Sadowski's good keeping, we didn't this time succumb to an early reverse in that sense. But yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? We're not scoring all the chances. We're not getting a little bit of luck down one end, and we're still occasionally giving up wonderful opportunities at the other end. It's not a great combination, is it, really?
Yeah, and I quite flippantly, I think one of the first commentaries or podcasts that we said we'll always give the opposition a chance because we're nice like that. Clearly that's not intentional, but yeah, we do seem to do that, don't we? We seem to always give the opposition a gilt-edged chance that in this circumstance wasn't taken, and I think we have to be thankful for that because. A post I posted out the other day, I think, kind of summed up my views on this. If you'd said at the beginning of the season that we'd have gone in for a 0-0 with Dynamo Minsk, great. We're not their level, so great, fair enough. Even more recently, even though they had a bit of a dip, they're starting to have a bit of something. It might be all right. We're kind of like, you go, okay, yeah, 0-0 with them, that's fine. But there's a real feeling after the fact this was a game we possibly could have done something against.
And that itself is quite remarkable, isn't it? Because I happened to notice the stats, actually. I was just looking through last season's fixtures. We actually got beaten 6-1 at Dinamo Minsk last year. So as you rightly say, it's a massive improvement. But, we've seen a little bit of Dinamo this season and not been desperately impressed. And there was really, again, nothing there to show us that really we didn't deserve to win the game, or we weren't going into the game with a real chance of winning it. And so, as you say, it feels a little bit like a missed opportunity. But I think, ultimately, as you say, we did get a point out of it. It wasn't pretty, but we did get a point that certainly, as you say, at the start of the season, we have taken. I think we always, Dan, that we always like to talk about formations and who plays and who doesn't play. I think the nature of modern day football is that we all think that we're better coaches than the coach himself or herself. And this week was no different for us, really, wasn't it? Looking at the lineups, were certainly a couple of things that took my eye, and I'm going to go back on every word I've ever said about Umarov in the past. I certainly think maybe now is the time for him to stand aside and give Softball a start. I think he did have one chance when he curled the ball, as he always does every week with his left foot, and this time at least it was on target. But I saw very little output from him apart from that. And Softball came on again and hit a beautiful volley, which unfortunately was straight at the keeper. I was actually looking back through his stats as well. He started the Torpedo game. His only game he started the season when they lost 2-0. Since then, he's come on a number of occasions. We've actually only conceded one goal with him on the pitch, and that was the goal against Dinamo Brest right in the very last kick of the game, basically. Now, I know Umarov, I still feel Umarov offers more going forward in spite of his difficulties in always turning his potential into actual solid output. But I do think the Southpaw must be thinking, really, I've got to get started this week, especially as we keep talking about we've only kept 4 clean sheets all season, and it's a big game this Friday, and I just feel we need a bit more defensive solidity, which Southpaw does offer us.
Yeah, and I know it sounds bad to say I'm coming from a different angle, because actually my view of Umarov is probably about as high as yours is. It's just when we initially talked about it, we probably had slightly different views as to where he sat. Yeah, I 100% view him as someone who would need to be, better coming off the bench than he is starting, and I don't see anything really that contributes to something that says otherwise. Yes, I'm going to put it perfectly bluntly. I think he needs to go back to the bench. I think Solpor needs to come on, and I think he needs to be an introduction in the second half. I just don't see that the way we're going about it at the moment brings the best out of the players at all.
Right, second one. Yudchits, right wing back. Gers on the bench. Your view, please. I know what I think.
I know what I think. I know,
everything, Dan, but we agree on this, don't we, as well? What's your view on that? I just find it incredible. I mean, I understand the principle. We talked about, I think, last week in the live stream about how there is a temptation to try and put what you believe to be your best 11 players on the pitch, but it isn't working. I know Gears is not naturally a right wing back either, but to me, what was telling was Dinamo started the second half a bit better. What did he do? Took off Yudchits and brought on Gears. What does that tell you? It tells you that, to me, that he thinks that Gears is better defensively, and the team that isn't great defensively. I cannot understand why he keeps playing Yudchits at right wing back.
No, and I think we've touched on this before as well. I mean, Gears for me is the best that we've got. You can kind of try and overanalyze this in different ways and what have you, but I don't think it boils down to that. I mean, why wouldn't you play Gears there? Everything we've seen, I mean, the game he started, I mean, he did really bloody well. I mean, let's kind of go back towards that. I understand that you have to then make a decision as to where you put your jits, but that's a secondary issue. What it really does, and looking back on a lot of these games, that's our biggest weakness, is that right back position, where they play up the right, and just shoring that up just really helps the whole team. So, yeah, I'm all for that. Let's do that. Done.
Excellent. Third point, Dan. Alternating our keepers. We've had Sadowski, Lesko, Sadowski. Do we think that's a good idea? Do we like that idea? Do we need to do it? I mean, maybe there are injuries there. I don't sense that there are. But, he's obviously put Sadowski into 2 potentially really big games and left Lesko for the potentially less big game at home to Belshina. Is there any rhyme or reason to this? Is it good for either keeper for this sort of, I think keepers often say, don't they, that they lose their sharpness if they don't have, run of games. I'm not sure what the logic is behind that.
Yeah, I mean, there does seem to be a bit of uncertainty as to who, irrespective of shirt numbers, etc., who the number one is. I mean, you've got 2 players at different ends of their career, I suppose. And it does feel a little bit like that's being managed. Whether that's wise or not, I don't know. And on the performance today, I didn't really see any issue why he wouldn't play Sadowski next week. On Friday, I just, I'd be quite happy to put him back in. There was nothing there to worry me. Unless there's obviously any agreement between the club and the players that actually they have to get a certain percentage of games or anything else, in which case maybe they're managing that situation. You've obviously got an older pro who's maybe expecting a certain level of performance as well. So, I mean, we're speculating from the outside. There's probably a lot going on the inside that we don't know about. For me, I prefer to settle down to one. I understand that perhaps puts a bit of rustiness into the other, but understanding in the Belarusian League, it's once a week that the games are happening. I mean, you got a bit of deviation between Friday and Sunday, but it's once a week. So if someone does have to come back in, there's a bit of time to manage that. So yeah, I'm all for kind of settling down a little bit. I'd prefer to stick with the younger keeper purely because that means we're planning further ahead, not just this season but beyond. But I'm fully conscious of the fact we don't have all the facts, so I'm willing to hold my hands up and say that.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, on Friday, we haven't got long to wait this week. We're the first game on this week, aren't we? At 3:00 on Friday afternoon. So we think we've managed to arrange to provide our usual live stream for that occasion. Let's have a little look at the game itself. I mean, for me, I know we've talked about this before, but this is a real must-win game. This is the last game of the first half of the season. We are in a good position. 3 points would be wonderful. We are 3 points off second place at the moment, I believe. But we're also 3 points off ninth place. And I think this is pivotal in many ways in terms of confidence and everything else that we do, that we do this well. Because ultimately, if we can't manage to beat Slavia, then we are in danger of ending this first half of the season in about 7th or 8th place. And for me, that's not really reflective of all that we've achieved. I mean, clearly the tables don't lie, do they? So it would be reflective of what we've achieved, but it doesn't feel right. It feels below what all the promise that we've shown, and the only way to obviously solve that problem is to actually sort ourselves out and get a home win, having not managed to beat either Vitebsk or Belshina.
Yeah, and I know John's working on his preview, which should be hopefully launching tomorrow as well, if I remember correctly, or Thursday, I can't remember which. And he goes much more in depth on the opposition teams. Me personally, never had an interest in the opposition. Don't want to know. It's not my team. They can go and do one, to be perfectly honest with you. That said, I do appreciate that they have an impact on the game and so on and so forth. I'd like to think that based on the teams that they've done well against and not, this should be a game we should win. I know if I remember correctly, they've beaten Bate twice out of 3 games this season, which is a slight, just a little nod. But, we know from personal experience, Bate aren't the hardest team to beat if you got the mind for it. So, that's perhaps not saying much. I'm not looking at them with fear. And even compared to like Dynamo Minsk last week, I'm not even looking at them with kind of even that level of caution. This should be a game we should win.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, basically, they've only kept 2 clean sheets all season, which encourages me hugely. However, Belshina, when they came to our place, hadn't kept any. So that doesn't encourage me so much. We can't afford to be overconfident about the threat that they pose, because they score goals, they concede goals. We would like to think, obviously, that we were talking about a regulation 2-0 victory against Belshina. I'd certainly take that this week. And also, I think it's really important that we go into the game feeling confident, because we have deserved more than 2 points from the last 4 games. But at the same time, I think we also need to be thinking, this lot have beaten Bate twice, as you say. We've beaten them, but then, they're a side that's only now 5 points behind us, Dan, and that's remarkable. I think probably a few weeks ago, I saw Slavia hovering above the drop zone, and all of a sudden, as tends to happen in this league, you string a load of results together, a good set of results together, as Niemann have done, and are now in the top 3, and all of a sudden, things turn around for you, and to end this particular half of the season 2 points ahead of Slavia, to me, would be an indication of obviously of how well they've risen to the challenge after a sticky start, but also how far we've fallen. So I do see this as a massive game for us. If we could end with a win, also with it being the first game of the weekend, it gives us the chance to be right up there, to have the points on the board and everyone else to be aiming to get past us. Then that would be great psychologically, I think, for the team to see themselves back in 2nd or 3rd place. Conversely, it would be a real damp squib if we ended this first half down 8th or 9th after all the progress that we feel we've made.
Yeah, this whole thing about expectations is a really weird one, isn't it? we both follow other teams. We both have expectations for our teams in their leagues based on years and years of following them, and kind of expectation based on what's happened the season before and moves that were done in the transfer window, and so on and so forth. We've kind of come to this league a little bit blind. We don't have any of that experience. We don't know to a certain degree. Okay, we can read up on it and we can try and build up that knowledge, but we don't know how it feels to follow this club year after year. We don't know what the pains are, what the payoffs are. This is our first season. We can look at last season. I think there were 12. We can look at where we are, and I think any reasonable person would expect that anything over 12 would be an improvement. However, based on our experience coming from the outside, falling below, 6th would feel really painful, would feel really odd. Even if logically, I can look back and I can say, okay, there were 12 last season, they moved to, 7th. That would feel really odd to me based on the performances they put in, the results they were getting and where they were in the table. And I guess that's a slight disconnect from our usual following, because we're coming at it from a side angle rather than our usual following. Yeah, I'm going to get off my soapbox and.
Fingers crossed. We'll be there just before 3:00 on Friday. Hope to hear. Actually, we won't, I was just going to say hope to see you. We won't be seeing you, but we hope that you'll be able to listen in as well, or keep half an eye on it, at least if you're still at work. Enjoy wearing your shirt in the meantime, Dan. I believe all the others have gone on their merry way to their owners, and you found the process such a straightforward and simple one that you're already taking orders for the next batch. Is that right?
So there's a couple of separate answers to that seemingly simple statement. All the people who pre-ordered, the shirts came in. They were sent off from here on Monday. They're on the way. I think it'll take 2 to 3 days. So I imagine they'll probably pop up tomorrow, the day after, give or take. They all look good. Not gonna lie. I put mine on, took a photo, went for a run in mine. I'm just saying. It wasn't the most straightforward of situations. It basically took about 3 months to sort this out. Not really the club's fault either. I mean, I know I've touched on this, but just to really make a point, the club is not a big club. The club did not have shirts hanging around. The club had to order shirts in to then get all the graphics and everything added to then send them out to me. And about 90% of the delay was getting the shirts into them in the first place. They just don't have spare shirts kicking around. It's just not a thing. So it was really good of them to do that. And I just want to say major thanks to them and the guy there who's helped me out. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to do more. And if we do anything else, I need to really kind of sort that out with them. But if they do, serious bloody patience will be involved.
Yeah, it was tongue in cheek. I can assure you that. I think we probably know that that's the most we're going to get for a while. But that's great, and I'm delighted for those who've got them. Gutted that I haven't, of course, but delighted for those who've got one. Enjoy them. Enjoy the game Friday, and we'll be back next week to let you know what we made of it all, and perhaps to give a little bit of an overview of how we've found the first half of the season, our first ever half season supporting Energetik. So thank you again for your time.
Indeed. Take care.
Thanks again for taking time out of your busy lives to listen to us talk about a team whom we knew nothing not so long ago, but who we now hold dear to our football supporting hearts. Please do contact us with comments and suggestions if you have any. My Twitter handle is @AGameInSpain and Dan's is @MajorDanB. That's with an A at the end. If, like us, you feel like talking about Energetik most days of the week, or even just at weekends, please do contact Dan and he will add you to the Energetik Ultras Twitter chat. We'll be back next week, but until then, please do stay Energetik. We firmly believe that you won't regret it. Do svidania.